We're cruising with Swan Hellenic on the small ship Minerva to the Orinoco River. We join the ship in Santa Cruz de Tenerife in the Canary Islands, having flown from Gatwick. After our first night on Minerva, we have a full day in Tenerife, and excursions are included on Swan Hellenic. We chose the La Orotova and Botanical Gardens trip. Our first stop is Puerto de la Cruz on the far side of the island. This was once the principal port of the island, but is now a tourist resort. It's also home to the Botanical Gardens, founded in 1788 by King Carlos III. A brief stop at the Humboldt lookout, from where we can see Puerto de la Cruz on the coast. La Orotova is one of the best preserved old towns in the islands. Outside the town hall, an enormous nativity scene is being created. This building dates from 1509. The House of Balconies across the road is 150 years newer, but is famous for its typical wooden balconies. As we walk back towards our coach, a final look back at the town. Overnight, it's just a short hop for Minerva to the island of La Palma and Santa Cruz de La Palma. La Palma is claimed to be the steepest island in the world. Smaller and less developed touristically than Tenerife, agriculture is still important here. We took the panoramic La Palma tour, and one stop was the Plaza La Glorieta. Made from thousands of ceramic tiles, it's the creation of a local artist and has taken many years to complete. The designs feature local symbolism and flora and fauna. After lunch, we took a walk round the old town. Santa Cruz was founded in 1493 and was once the third most important port in the Spanish Empire. The Palazzo de Salazar dates from the early 17th century and boasts some splendid wooden balconies inside. The Church of San Salvador dates from the early 16th century. The town hall was built around 1560 as the Governor's Palace. Both buildings face on to the Plaza de España. The main street is called O'Daly Street, after an Irish banana merchant. And it's back on board Minerva for a 2-day sail down the coast of Africa to the Cape Verde Islands, and we're headed for the island of São Vicente and the port of Mindelo. The island group of Cape Verde is now a republic and was once a Portuguese colony originally settled in 1462. The land in the background is the island of São Anão, about 12 miles away. São Vicente is very arid and wasn't populated until the early 19th century, when British companies set up coaling stations for the newly developing steamship industry. We're on the Taste of the Island tour, and we've come to the centre of Mindelo. That's the former government house. And we're about to go into Mindelo's market hall. We've now driven halfway up Mount Verde, the highest mountain on São Vicente. These roads were originally built by hand in the 1930s as a job creation program. There's Mindelo down below with São Anão opposite. Next, it's Catfish Bay, which is being promoted and developed as a tourist resort. We are treated to a folkloric display. This is tam-tam dancing, which is related to carnival. Moving a bit further around the coast, looking back at Catfish Bay. The road is very new and has been built with a view to developing tourism. Our next stop is in a valley which has the benefit of underground water supply from boreholes. So small-scale agriculture is possible. And back to the port and on board Minerva for the afternoon. Late afternoon, we leave the Cape Verde Islands for a 5-day sailing across the Atlantic to the Île du Salut, French Guiana. Our first sight of the islands, and it's St. Joseph on the left and Devil's Island on the right. On the coast is Kourou, where the European Space Centre is located. Somebody with powerful binoculars said that white structure could have been a rocket on a launch pad. As we turn, we can see all 3 islands, Devil's Island on the right, Ile Royale in the centre, and St. Joseph on the left. Crystal Symphony has been in the morning, and we're taking over her anchorage. Rounding St. Joseph's Island now to come into the anchorage opposite Ile Royale. Crystal Symphony preparing to leave. Minerva's tenders by the jetty. We've come ashore in the tender and we're beginning our walk around the island. There's a view of St. Joseph's Island. The remains of one of the old penal colony buildings. There's Devil's Island, only about 250 metres away, but the waters are extremely treacherous. Because of this, the authorities installed a cable car system, and these buildings are all that remains of that. The falsely convicted Captain Alfred Dreyfus spent 4 years as the only prisoner on Devil's Island in the 1890s. This is a memorial to a Chinese scientist who went missing swimming off here when he worked at the European Space Centre. This is an agouti, a large South American rodent. The Île du Salut were a French penal colony for about 100 years from the 1850s. Some of the old buildings have been restored and form a museum. Part of the former prison complex now houses a hotel, which you can stay at for €60 a night. Hummingbird feeders hung outside the bar. The hotel provides a higher viewpoint for Devil's Island. A capuchin monkey. Back to the jetty for the tender ride back to Minerva. Minerva sails in the late afternoon and spends a day at sea before arriving in the morning in the delta of the Orinoco River in Venezuela. The Orinoco is one of the longest rivers in South America, but only a third of the length of its mighty neighbour the Amazon. The Orinoco Basin is thinly populated, but there are settlements along the river, and in many places people came out to see us. The wildlife experts on board were on the lookout for all sorts of things. The Orinoco is home to a species of pink dolphin, similar to the one found in the Amazon, but we didn't manage to spot any, although some others did. Our original schedule had us only travelling a short distance upriver, then dropping anchor and turning round and coming back, but the Venezuelan authorities have insisted that we travel much further upriver for a full customs inspection. That will happen in the morning, so we continue sailing upriver through the night. In the morning we are docked at Puerto Ordaz, part of the large city of Ciudad Guayana. Ciudad Guayana is a fast-growing city and an important industrial and commercial centre in Venezuela, but the jetty we're berthed at doesn't look too promising. Some ship breaking going on nearby. We've no idea what this Chinese ship was doing. We weren't allowed to get off the ship while it was docked, and eventually, after the customs people had come and searched the ship, including some passenger cabins, and the pilot had got back on board, we were allowed to sail off in the early afternoon. Now we can see in the daylight parts of the river we passed in the dark last night. There's clearly some sort of mining or quarrying activity going on here. passing by a larger settlement, but I'm afraid I've no idea what it's called. After leaving the Orinoco Delta, we head towards Barbados. We should have been there the following afternoon, but because we had to go further upriver, it's late evening when we arrive. In the morning, stores are being loaded for Minerva's next cruise, which will take it to Cuba. We now only have a morning to look around. There's a large carnival ship in port with us, and a private yacht that's had some kind of mishap. We take a stroll from the cruise terminal to the Pelican Craft Centre, which isn't as thriving as it has been on some previous visits. The bus station's next door to the Pelican Centre, but we turned round here and walked back to the cruise terminal, where we're entertained by a local choir. After lunch, we're taken by coach to Barbados Airport to await our overnight flight to Gatwick on Virgin Atlantic.